Years ago, my brother rolled over the family vehicle, a Dodge. We pulled the body off. We found that they had a nice chassis. I decided to build a car. I don't know why I wanted to build an automobile. It was ridiculous. I had no tools. I started off by going to Sears and Roebuck, and I bought a welding kit, a couple of picking hammers, dollies, and so forth. And we had a vacant chicken coop. Brought the chassis in, put it on 2 sawhorses, and I started to build an automobile. For what reason, I don't know. And once I started, I go so far and I said, well, this doesn't look too good. I hacked it away, welded something else on it, reformed it. I went through 4 dashboards. I built the first 2. They were all right, but they didn't look very good. And then I happened to get a DeSoto Hemi engine with a transmission. And I built a new dashboard because the DeSoto that year had the piano keys, push-button transmission. Well, I built the dashboard, then I found that the engine fit, but the bell housing and the transmission didn't. Well, that was the end of that dashboard. So this is the final dashboard that I built, and it's all fiberglass. I made the mold originally out of plaster, and I saw some Studebaker instruments. They looked good, but they had a hood on them. And I had an airplane cylinder from a Pratt & Whitney engine, and I knocked the fins off, I melted them, and I made the bezels in a coffee can. And I had a friend of mine who had a World War I lathe. That was harder than building a car, right? And one thing led to another. I had friends that helped me. I had a friend of mine that had a sheet metal shop, and like the leftover airplane snips that they were almost worn. So I got all those for nothing, and they came in handy cutting the middle and so forth. And for the interior, I couldn't find a black carpet. And I happened to go to some department store and they had a black carpet, only one, and it was the exact fit that I put in the automobile. And in the trunk I had to use a gold one because there was no more black ones. And the top was sort of hard because my brother helped me make it, and we made the top fiberglass with no mold. And I was at an auto show one year at the Prudential Plaza, and there were some engineers there from MIT, and they wanted to know how I made a rooftop without a mold. I never told them, but this young kid was there, and he says, I'm going to find your secret. I says, look, if you don't say anything, I'll tell you how to do it. And the kid's name was John Silva, I think from Arlington. He did some gorgeous. As he get older, he made some beautiful automobiles. And the leather I found from, at the time I was building this automobile, vinyl had come in. And all the manufacturers were using vinyl, which killed the leather business. And in Lowell, Mass was American Hide and Leather, one of the biggest tanneries in the country, and they made leather for Chrysler, Packard, all the old cars. So I bought the leather there, and I cut it, I marked it, and so forth. I had some friend of mine that had a sewing machine, but he wasn't, the machine was good, but he wasn't so hot. So all the lines weren't exactly parallel. But now the leather is perfect, and Joe's niece, Elizabeth, did it and matched every single seam. It goes from one seat to the next. Everything is perfect. And they don't do lacquer dyeing leather in this country anymore. So Joe started to find leather that was lacquer dyed and matching the same color. And the nearest place you could find was in Argentina. And that's the leather that's in the car now. It's absolutely beautiful, the right color. It fit well. And what else?
In the body of this car, you used a lot of different pieces in the body. There's some Kaiser parts,
yeah.
there's other parts. Tell us about the body in the car,
Front
how you made
fenders
that.
were Kaiser, but they were rounded. And I didn't like that, so I hacked them off. I rolled a piece of metal, and they are as you see them. And the opening, I had a piece of tubing that I rolled around, and I was hammering soft stainless to make a dish to put the headlights in. Originally, that was supposed to be the intake for the V8 two big 4-barrel carburetors. Well, I ended up getting a couple of headlights from a Fisher snowplow. Then they cut the bottom off. I cut the back off, welded it on the back of the headlight, and then I was hammering the trim, and my sister-in-law happened to come by. She used to bake a lot of cakes, and she says, "What are you making?" I said, "This." She went to her car, came back with an Angel food cake tin, and plop, it fit perfect. Now, for 79 cents, she saved me a lot of work. And it fit. Now, the back end was all welded, and it started off with a flat piece of metal. I rolled it, and the trunk part was a 1950 Chevy hood that I split down the middle. I added a piece to it, and I made the tailgate. And the spare tire, I had to find a place for that. I found, I raided all the junkyards. I mean, everybody in the junkyard knew me. And that was a wheel off a LaSalle side mount. And it had a chrome disc trim on it. I cut the trim off, and I rounded it so you can see it. It's plain now. Right? The spare is actually in there. And the taillights, I had to weld that slot up. That was for a cutaway light. It's the whole vertical part of it. And I welded that up, and I got a taillight off a 1950 Pontiac, but I didn't, the bezel was good, and I didn't like the lens, and I got a lens off of DeSoto. That was the year DeSoto had 3 lenses on the taillights. Right? And now the wheels are old-fashioned, and the spindle sticks out. So you need a hubcap that does the same thing. And I found the hubcaps at some aftermarket place on Commonwealth Avenue, and they fit. And over the years, I had the car in the garage. When I had it on storage, the hubcaps rusted. So my father threw them in a dump. Now, where you find hubcaps that old? Joe went to a swap meet in Hershey, Pennsylvania, and would you believe these 4 identical hubcaps, they fit perfect, just like the originals, including the insignia. Other than that, I had a lot of trouble building this because it was compound curves, and I don't know how many I made. And what I finally did is I got a glass off of some car, and I had it cut down to this, and I made the frame fit the glass rather than go the other way. And it fit, it's still there, and it hasn't fogged or anything. It's good. The rear view mirror was off of some foreign car. I don't know if it was a Ferrari or a Maserati, but I cut it down so it fit. Other than that, Joe, it's not too much.
How about the window frames? Didn't you make all the window frames, Arthur? That's good right there.
All these window frames I made by hand. And the funny thing was, these doors were not made for window frames. They were made for plain glass. So I had to make new channels for all the windows to roll down in, because they're about ½ an inch instead of ¼ of an inch. And they work. And the space here, when you have the top on, the windows are up, there's a chrome panel that fits right in this spot. And in the old days when we used to go to shows, they always looked at the trunk. And everybody had to have a jack, a tow chain, a blanket, a first aid kit, on and on and on. I'm glad I never had to use any of that.
Yeah.
And right now, all that's in there is Joe did a nice job. He put a black carpet to match the rest of the car, right?
Yep.
And seat belts in 1959, I think, were unheard of. And of course, there's the seat belts are here.
They're Allstate, huh?
Yeah,
Allstate seat belts.
all state. And they were guaranteed 4,000 pounds strength. The steering wheel is offset. It has universal joints under the hood. But if you hit this wheel at 250 pounds, it will go right down to the dashboard. Everything will collapse. Everything will telescope down. It's a 57 Ford. And I didn't realize the wheels were that big then, but no power steering. I started to make suspended pedals. Finally, by the time I got halfway through, Ford Motor Company came out with the pedals. They saved me a lot of work. I adapted the Ford pedals here and the master cylinders. And what else did I have in here? The dashboard, 2 bolts on this steering wheel will drop down. 4 bolts, and once you unplug the wiring, the dashboard will come out. So if you have to work on it, you put it on a bench. You don't have to lie on your back to work on it. The glove compartment is operated with solenoids. However, 6 volts does not operate as 12-volt solenoid very well. But I had a battery from a flashlight in series with a car battery, which gave me 12 volts, which opened the dashboard. But the trunk was too far back. There was too much voltage drop. So we put an emergency kit underneath just in case the solenoid failed, right? And it works. What else we got here, Joe?
Well, Arthur, up here in the dash is the first annual National Champion Custom Car Show, Plaque. Tell us about that big show when you took this car out to Detroit. And,
Oh, yeah,
now let me just ask you this. Darryl Starbird was there. Gene Winfield was there.
George Barris.
George Barris was there. And you competed against all of the big guns. What happened at that show, Arthur?
I won first place. And George Barris went ballistic because he thought, how come an East Coaster wins when all the customizers are from the West Coast? Which is true. But he also makes nice automobiles. And I drove the car for 2 years, put it up in blocks, 48 years. Now, Joe got a ride in this car when he was 10 years old. He sat in back, his father sat in front. His father and I were very good friends. And Joe always wanted to buy the car. I says, no. Well, he fell in love with the car. He finally, after 50 years, I decided that I was too old, 90 years old, to get under automobiles and start rebuilding a car. After 48 years, nothing moved. No wheel cylinders, engines, nothing moved at all. So Joe took over. He got the car. I'm glad because it's somebody that knows all about it. And he found an identical, the condition I gave Joe was everything had to be as it was original. And he went through a lot of trouble to find everything, but he did. And they did the engine over, the transmission, rear end. It's better than a new car. But after 48 years, that was my 50th anniversary. Joe worked night and day to restore the automobile. And that was a problem. I mean, I had to paint it. Everything had to work. Chrome had to be done over again. Anyway, and he finished it in time to enter it at the Detroit Autorama. And right across from me in the aisle was my buddy George Barris. He was signing autographs, and I was signing autographs, but we're also serving wine. With the bottle had the picture of my car on it. And Joe entered it at the show, and it was the only car to win first place 50 years later. And here it is. I'm now 93 years old. All I can do is open the doors and get in and drive it.
Arthur, we've been on a great journey in this car, you and I.
What's that?
I said, we've been on a great journey in this car, you and I. All right? My journey in this car started when I was like 10 or 11 years old. You giving me a ride in the car. And you were driving. My dad was sitting here. Roberta was sitting in the middle.
My girlfriend was here, and Joe fell in love with the perfume that was blowing in his face as we were driving along.
But you know, that was the most impressionable ride in my life. I mean, I fell in love with this car, and I've always said I fell in love with women at the same time and all of that. But, you know, 50 years later, bringing that out to Detroit was really something. But to me, the whole big experience was not only did we go to Detroit and take a first place Radical Custom Convertible, but we went to the Grand National Roadster show with the car. We then went to the Peterson Museum. Yep, go ahead, Arthur.
Pebble Beach.
Pebble Beach. We went to Pebble Beach. We were invited to Pebble Beach.
I didn't win, but boy, it's an honor to be there.
So
they had what, 200 cars?
About 200 cars, and we were invited to go to Pebble Beach.
Yeah.
And now the car, after that whirlwind touring of the car, has found a beautiful home up here at the Owl's Head Museum. Yeah. So it's just.
And the nice thing about Pebble Beach, you see guys old like me driving McLarens, Lamborghinis, Ferraris. I said, geez, I'm in the wrong place.
Yeah, but you didn't tell anybody you got a Maserati and you got a Lamborghini sitting in your garage at home, though.
Oh, well, that's my second car.
That's your second car. The grill in the front.
Oh, geez.
The grill in the front, was that... Tell me about the grill in the front.
I was looking for something to make a grill. And I couldn't find anything in a junkyard that I could actually use from another automobile. The chrome trim on top is off of Oldsmobile. That was the side trim that came down like this. And I cut it up, welded it together and so forth, but the grill in front, I happened to be in the sheet metal shop. I said, you got anything unusual? Oh, go upstairs, we got all kinds of junk. There was a piece of metal on the floor, everybody was walking on it for years, and that ended up being my grill.
Yeah, the front and the back is I mean, the front is beautiful for this car. I can look at the front of this car, you know, forever. And it's so beautiful, all the lines, everything works together. And the back works together. But what I thought was intriguing on the back was the center section of the bumper. You took a weld casing and you sawed this by hand in half.
Yeah. The rear bumper I made out of a piece of 6-inch diameter, 1/8-inch steel tubing. And it took me several weeks to split it with a keyhole saw. So I had enough to make the rear bumper. I don't know how long it took, but I did a lot of welding there and a lot of hammering. I think I wore a hammer out. But it finally fit. And the side panel was 1/8-inch steel I hammered that out. And finally it all fit together.
Now all the side, I know, look, sticking with the back bumper, you put this piece in the center and then these center sections, but then what you did is you made the dual exhaust come out of the bumpers.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
I never liked to watch automobiles. When you look at them, you can see the muffler, you can see the drive shaft, but say, oh, what a beautiful car. Not as far as I'm concerned. So I built this car. You can lay down on your belly and look underneath and you see nothing. It'll be a clear shot all the way through. Nothing hanging below. So that's why the mufflers and the exhaust ended up coming out of the bumper.
That's really, yeah.
Then it works.
Now, the bumper you hand fabricated, I was very interested, you know, when I did this car over, of course, the side panels were in rough shape, the bottom chrome skirts, but how did you form those whole bottom panels on the car, that whole long chrome thing? What was involved with doing that?
I had a 10-gallon milk jug, and it's about that big around, and I started rolling it back and forth, but the end on top, this friend of mine had a sheet metal shop, and he had this offset pliers about this wide where you could actually grab something and fold it back, but just start a little bit, a little bit, a little bit, a little more, and eventually it'll come. And I did a bit of, I have no raw ends on any chrome. Everything has a cap on it. That was, if you open the, you can see the doors and everything. And the chrome trim inside was off a Pontiac. That was the spear that started here, and then it ended up being a double going back. Well, I got that in the junkyard. I turned it upside down and I cut it to fit. And now it's an unusual, nobody recognizes it as a Pontiac piece.
Yeah, especially with it being turned upside down.
And it lined up with the handles.
Yeah. Now these pieces here, Arthur, did you make all of these pieces here
Well,
also?
this came off of a Dodge.
Off of a Dodge, and you modified it to fit?
No, it wouldn't fit. I had to cut it and put a wedge in it to make it go at an angle, so forth. But I had to weld brackets underneath for everything to hook on. And the chrome is held on a piece of steel, about whatever the length is, and I welded screws on there, then drilled the holes in the door. Now all you have to do is hang the chrome on it, tighten it up from the inside, and that's what holds it on. Excuse me.
You know, there was a lot of chrome to hang on this car when we put the chrome all back on.
Yeah.
Actually, the bill for doing the chrome looked like a telephone number.
Well, the original guy that did the chrome, I knew nothing about chrome other than it looked good when I built the car. And the only chrome outfit I knew was one in Lawrence, Mass. He chromed it, and after the second year, it started to flake off. And I was too busy then because I worked at my mother's restaurant. We manufactured go-karts, Cavallo carts, racing boats, real estate, and had no time to do anything anymore. So the car stayed in the garage on blocks for 48 years.
Yeah, so it was 1959 that you first built the car and showed it.
Right.
You showed it in 60. In 61, it went on blocks.
On blocks.
And over those 3 years, how many first place trophies did you get with this car?
Oh, I don't know. I had a whole bunch of them.
I have them all in the shop. I think there's about 30 of them, Arthur.
Whatever. But they were all first place.
All first place trophies in this car. So every show you went into, you get a first place.
But what my mother used to say, I'm proud of my two boys. They can do anything but make money.
Yeah, you probably done okay in that department.
But anyway, the chicken coop, I eventually tore it down, and to get the car out, I took a chainsaw, cut the whole wall out, drove the car out, But I happened to notice at the time on the chicken coop, there was a little stem from a maple tree with 2 leaves on each end of the building. I had to cut the tree down because it grew to 70 feet high and it fell down. It would really crush my house.
Yeah, that was a long time ago.
But I mean, it's the other tree is still there from the other end.
Arthur, I thought another story I thought was really interesting was when you painted this car. You painted it with Ditzler double deep black lacquer, but what I thought was really interesting and scary was you painted it in the winter and you took the paint.
Oh, I painted it in a chicken coop.
Yeah, but you took the paint and heated it up on the wood stove, right?
And that was during the winter, and I had a chicken brooder stove. In other words, you fed coal and it warmed it. But because there were chickens upstairs, my mother got mad. I took all the bed sheets and stapled them to the ceiling so the chicken dust wouldn't come down.
When you painted the car?
And I painted the car. I built my own compressor, and about 16 to 18 coats. And what I did is I did a coat a day, let it set up, I wet sanded it, next day another coat and so on until I finished the paint. And I buffed it with Meguiar's. I still use Meguiar's. And the lacquer on this car is nitrocellulose lacquer. Now they don't use that anymore. I mean, the Japanese do. But they use an acrylic. And nitrocellulose lacquer, if you look at it under a microscope, all you see is black. Nitrocellulose lacquer, you'll see microscopic little dots. So what that is, it's suspended in the thinner. But this, if you heat it, it will dissolve, it will melt. The old phonograph records were made out of the same stuff.
Sure.
They called them wax records, but they were nitrocellulose.
Yeah, and when I repainted this car, Arthur, I had a lot of trouble finding the paint. But I did find acrylic lacquer, and it's painted in lacquer just like you painted the car in lacquer, which is very rare today. People do base coat, clear coat. But
now, I don't know.
We did it again in lacquer, so it's got the same basic type of paint on here. I'll never forget the day, Arthur, that I met you at Town Hall, all right? And it was before I got the car, it was maybe in 2006 or 2007, and you said to me, Joe, I'm finally ready to do something with the car. Come on over. And I left, and I was like a little nervous hen, and I went over the next day, and we went over the whole car the next day, and you said to me, you know, some of the things that I want is I want to ride in the car again, okay? I want to enjoy it again, and I want to make sure it looks like what it did. So we went through that whole restoration, and then finally, to celebrate the 50th anniversary of you winning that national championship was when we brought it back to Detroit and took that fantastic first place.
Some person flew up from Texas. He didn't believe that the car won first place 50 years later.
I know, yeah.
Yeah. Remember him?
Yeah, I sure do, yeah. I remember him on that.
Anyway, the most fun I had is going to car shows. And a lot of shows, I wouldn't go. There were a lot of kids that had some real nice first place trophy automobiles. And to go to a show, and there's the poor guy with a show winner, and he knows that he's not going to win because I went there. So what I would do is I would go to every other show. Now everybody else had a chance to win first place, and they all liked me for that. And there were a lot of nice automobiles. And of course, some cars, what they did is all the wire used to hang on the dash, under the dash, and they had angel's hair with lights to hide it. I said, well, I'll never do that. All the wiring in this automobile is right here.
All along the top.
You have to break your back to get to it. That's why the dashboard can't come out. But anyway, the radio is a Sears Roebuck. It was the top of the line back then, It has a big power unit like that. If you leave it on for an hour, you're going to get a push because the battery's going to die on you. But other than that, I enjoy driving it. I used to park it everywhere. I used to go to drive-in theaters with it. I never got to look at the movie because everybody's looking at the car. But I drove it 2 years as an everyday automobile. And the funny thing is, no matter where I parked it, nobody bothered it. At one time I had parked it in an alley in Lowell, and a bunch of them moved the car and put it on the street. How they did it, I don't know. How they figured out how to put it in neutral, I don't know. But they did it. Not a mark on it. Billy Cactus.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you know Billy.
Yeah, speaking of neutral, all right, the way this car shifts is very different. It doesn't, it's a 3-speed in the column, but it's not an H pattern. It's up and down. You only have up and down. So how do you get all of these gears if you don't have an H pattern? You know?
Clutch release.
And that's in the bottom of the pedal.
Yeah, you step on the clutch pedal all the way to the floor, and now you can put it in first and reverse. As you're driving along, just barely touch the clutch and you can shift it
Between second and third.
second and third.
But you have to push the pedal all the way to the floor to get it into first
Yeah.
or reverse. And the other thing about it is the shift pattern is actually backwards also.
I don't remember how it got backwards.
Yeah, and you know, we talked about that because you thought it was normal, and when we rebuilt the car and hooked everything all up, it came out that way, and we tried to flip the shift lever around and it didn't work.
What happened was, for the clutch, my linkage wouldn't work. So I got a hydraulic wing flap actuator from a P-51 Mustang. And I put it on in here with a bell crank. But that seized, and where am I going to find another P-51 Mustang cylinder? So Joe put a slave unit direct, eliminated the bell crank and everything else. So the throw is a little less because it doesn't have the leverage of the bell crank. Other than that, it works. And I still think somehow it got backwards.
Yeah, I
But
never
I mean,
figured that one out.
50 years, yeah, even I have loopholes. Other than that, but I used to park it outside my mother's restaurant, and people would stop, come in, look at it. But the top is heavy. Takes 2 guys to lift it. And what I did now for these windows to fit, off a 1957 Plymouth 2-door hardtop, they had this welt metal backing that would fit here. So what I did is I rolled that back in on the milk jug to fit the windows. And that's why it fits. But I mean, that piece is kind of hard to find because there aren't many 57 Plymouth hardtops.
No. You used that milk jug for bending a lot of things, didn't you?
Yeah, I eventually used it for catering for fresh water.
So you used it to make your car, then you used it for catering for fresh water. That's a little different. Now, did you ever take your mom for a drive in this?
My mother?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and your father too?
No.
No, your father never drove in the car with you, huh?
No, he liked his car better.
He liked his car
He
better.
had a slant 6 Dodge.
A slant 6 Dodge. And the motor in this is the flathead Dodge motor.
Yeah, 6-cylinder.
Straight 6-cylinder flathead, nothing fancy. I think it's like 80 or 85 horsepower.
Yeah.
But actually, this car moves along really good down the highway.
Yeah, when we drove it to Detroit, we got 22 miles on a gallon.
Really? 22
It wasn't
miles?
bad.
That's really
It
good.
weighs 3,800 pounds with the top.
With the top.
And the accelerator pedal, I had trouble trying to find something to work. It came from a Plymouth or a Dodge because it had no lever on the top. It just worked from the bottom.
Yeah, there's
But
no lever in that.
It still works.
This car was made out of lots of different pieces from other cars.
But
All
like
right.
I said, everybody in the junkyards know me.
But that was very typical back then, that you'd take pieces from different cars to make a car. I mean,
Yeah.
it wasn't like they didn't have the fancy machinery that we have today to do these kinds of things.
Because the dashboard is too far away from the transmission, I had to find a longer speedometer cable
Yeah.
off of a Studebaker.
A Studebaker for
A
that.
lot of cars in the junkyards are upside down. So it's a lot easier to pull those things out, you know?
Oh,
But all the nuts and bolts, the floor panels will come out. It's all speed nuts.
Yeah.
So you can get at the transmission from in here.
now how come you didn't put a back seat in here? You got this area back here.
Oh no, the back seat, I had 4 suitcases, matched luggage that fit
So
perfect.
this was just your suitcases in the back.
Well, I let people borrow them, and that's the end of that. But the suitcases matched, and they fit perfect.
Yeah.
4 of them.
So
That's what it was. A touring car.
now
right?
that was to go away. Now, not to get too personal, Arthur, but you were a very, very handsome man when you were young. All right.
I had black hair then.
You had black hair, but I would imagine that the ladies really like this car. Is that?
The funny thing is, I used to park at downtown in Lowell, in front of the Dutch tea room, just like this, and I'd go talk to Billy and so forth. I'd come back. There's always girls sitting in it.
Always girls sitting in.
Always girls sitting.
You
in
didn't even have to ask them to get in the car.
I
They
used to
just-
ask them to get out of here because I wasn't going. Didn't have insurance for what they were thinking.
Yeah, because all that I remember in this car is I do remember that ride when Roberta was in the car.
Yeah.
And I remember Roberta, but I never met anyone else of your friends. But I do remember as a boy growing up, my dad and I would go up to your farm. All right, we'd go up to the restaurant and have a chicken dinner or something. Go up to the farm and look at your cars and your little projects. And I just remember as a boy seeing this. And then after 1961, I remember this car was parked in that front garage
Yeah.
where your dad used to park his
Well,
car. at
that's
one
where
time.
everything got rusty.
In that front little garage.
Yeah, even though it was watertight, the humidity rusted everything.
Right, right.
It rusted the chrome, worse. It rusted the hubcaps. And that's when I moved it to the barn.
Yeah. You know, those hubcaps that I found out in Hershey, what was really good about that was funny is we were looking for the hubcaps. We went out there specifically. I'd been looking for a year for the hubcaps. We went out there and a guy had 2 hubcaps, not 4, and he wanted like, I don't know, $150 a piece or something like that. So we're walking around and we got to this area. There was a lady and a couple kids, and I looked up and I saw this box and I saw this chrome thing, and it looked like the hubcaps, and I went up and there were 4 hubcaps, brand spanking new, old stock hubcaps.
there.
And I asked her how much she wanted for them, and I don't know if you remember this story, Arthur.
80 bucks.
Yep. Well, it was marked 100, and so she looked at a piece of paper and said to me, "Now you can take them for $80." And I said, $80 for all 4? She said, "Yep, 80 for all 4." So I bought the hubcaps. We walked away, and my brother-in-law said, "You rat, you're buying the steak tonight." So it was such a great deal to find those hubcaps. They're just impossible because it's not like they were Cadillac hubcaps. They look like it, but they're aftermarket hubcaps. Oh, Ellis the Rim Man. Was that where you got
Yeah,
the hubcaps?
I was just going to say that. Ellis the Rim Man. I don't know if he's still there. The hubcap on the Cadillac, when I built this automobile, had the center part separated, and it had little ducks swimming, so forth. Mine were originally just different colors. Now the new Caddy looks like the one I put on here 50 years ago.
Yeah, yeah. The emblem
They
looks very much
changed it.
like a Cadillac. Yeah.
Yeah.
Looks very, you know, sometimes people will look at this car when I've had it out and they'll look at the hubcaps and go immediately Cadillac.
Yeah.
Or they'll look at the car and think that it was built from a Ford or something or other. I find, and you probably did way back when, people would look at the car and wonder what it was. You know, nobody could figure out what this car really was.
What is it? Everything.
Yeah, it's a little bit of everything. I think years later, Johnny Cash did a song like
Those
that.
vents are off of the DeSoto.
They're off of a DeSoto.
They had 4 in their car, but these actually work.
They're off of DeSoto, and all of the switches and buttons down here. Where are those buttons off of? Where'd you get those things?
I had a friend of mine that had a screw machine shop, and I says, Kenny, he says, hell, too much work. So I happened to go to a Giant store back then, and they had cigarette lighters, 98 cents for the whole kit with the wire on it. So I bought a bunch of them. I cut them off. I re-drilled them. As you can see, I put a set screw in them, and now I have all the knobs match.
And they're all cigarette lighter knobs.
Cheap enough for 98 cents each.
Yeah.
How many are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.
8 of them.
What's that one?
This is, what's this? I don't know. Pulls out. Does something.
The heater.
That could be the heater one?
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't quite figured out all the knobs out there.
Well, when Joe got the automobile, he's under the dashboard. Couldn't find anything.
No.
But he found enough to get it running.
Yeah, it runs and the lights all work and the horn works and everything works, but
Oh,
you know,
no.
being 6-volt though,
Yeah.
the lights aren't very bright, Arthur.
No. And the horns I bought in 1939. I was at the World's Fair, and all the buses had this Spartan air horn, and they sounded beautiful. I found Spartan horns, but they're run off the battery. But if they finally get to work, you can hear them 4 miles away.
Yeah, they work good. They're pretty loud.
They're loud.
Yeah, they're pretty loud. Now things like the shift lever, did you make the shift lever?
I made the shift lever on my, what do you call it? Valve refacing machine.
On a valve refacing machine, you made the
And
shift lever.
I cut a 1/2 degree taper.
Yeah, because I can see it's fat
Yeah,
here,
that's
gets skinny down there.
This here came off a Chrysler product.
The end knob.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I look around and the little pieces of detail here, like putting the taper onto that. That's really something. And the directional stock.
Oh, that's stainless.
That's stainless.
Yeah.
That's
Oh,
just a
no.
piece of stainless.
It's loose, though.
We'll have to tighten that up.
Yeah.
Right.
Do they work?
Yeah, they work fine. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
they all work. Everything works really fine on the whole car. You
And
know,
the other thing, the glove compartment is waterproof.
that's waterproof. I didn't know that. Yeah.
You spill a coffee in there, it's going to stay in there.
Oh, so if you spill, is it waterproof from water getting in there?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's. I know there's a thing underneath to open that up.
The solenoid, yeah.
Yeah, there was a solenoid, but you also had a mechanical override.
Also, when you lift the rear tailgate up,
The trunk lid.
there are 2 red lights. And in the old days, they didn't have the emergency flashes. So what I did is I got a kit off a school bus, and the lights oscillate back and forth in case of an emergency. However, we cannot find where we put the solenoid, not the what do you call it?
The flasher.
The flasher. It's in here someplace. And when I did all the wiring, I made a diagram, page after page. I had them in a trunk, and without looking one day, I primed it, and I primed all the wiring, the diagram. So now you have to trace it to find it
Yeah.
someplace.
Yeah. Yeah. The wiring in this car is still all the original wiring.
Well, the wiring is outside
That's
underneath
right.
the rocker panel.
That's right. Yeah.
And it's all laced
Yeah, you actually use regular lacing, that
Well,
wax-covered string lacing on that,
A lot of
right?
that stuff, the connectors came from Raytheon,
Yeah.
and they had all kinds of unusual connectors
Yeah.
and jacks and whatnot. But they're under here someplace.
Yeah. Yeah, I've found an awful lot in this car, and I'm sure there's a lot that that I just haven't found, you know?
But I look at a lot of things and I say, how did I do this? And I still don't know how I did a lot of things. What gave me the most trouble? This piece right here. Because it has a compound curve.
Yeah. It's actually quite low, this roof. You know, when you look
Yeah.
at it, you know, with respect to how high the roofs were at that day, it's almost like a built-in chopped roof.
Jay
Is what you
Leno
have.
commented he liked the angle.
Yeah. Yeah, it had a nice angle to it. Yeah, that was nice. We were at Pebble Beach. You met Jay Leno. How was that? Jay spent a bunch of time with you, right?
Yeah.
Looking over the car?
He liked the headlights.
Yeah, he did like the headlights. I think
Everybody
everybody
liked
likes
the
the headlights, yeah.
They say, what's holding the headlights up? You can put your hands all around them.
Yeah,
I said, well, that's why I call it a floating headlight.
yeah.
But it has a ball joint in the back where you cannot reach it with your fingers, but you can from under the fender.
Yeah, there's a nut there. You
there's a
loosen the nut and you
ball
can
joint.
rotate the headlight. I
Yeah.
know, you know, with you at car shows, we've challenged people to tell us how the headlights were made. And people will look at them and put their hands all around and never figure out how the headlights are made or what they're made out of. And when you tell them what you did for the headlights, they scratch their head going, wow, that's crazy, you know?
Well, they work good on a snowplow.
Yeah, they work good in a snowplow. They work even better on your custom car, you know? Yeah. Now, I remember one time you were telling me a story that you read in a magazine that maybe was part of the inspiration for building the car. Somebody made a comment that the car looked like, or a car that was in the magazine looked like something a farmer would build. And you were a chicken farmer.
It was in Hot Rod magazine, and they had a section on dragsters. And some guy had a dragster there, and he actually won. And it says it looked so crude that it looked like a farmer built it. Well, that sort of rubbed me the wrong way at the time, but when they put the car in the Hot Rod magazine, they happened to mention that I got mad because I was a farmer.
Was that some of the influence to build the car?
Nope,
After that, no.
no.
Yeah.
I don't know why I wanted to build. Maybe I couldn't afford to buy one.
So back in the day, I mean, this car was in the November 1959 Hot Rod magazine.
Centerfold.
This was the centerfold car in that magazine. I buy every copy that I can ever find, you know, of that magazine. But here's you, a guy from the East Coast, you end up in the centerfold of Hot Rod magazine, all right, at that time. And that magazine was published by Peterson, right?
Yeah.
And it's ironic, 50 years after that, this car ends up spending a year at the Peterson Museum in LA.
And it came out in a Hot Rod Deluxe magazine.
And it was in Hot Rod magazine again 50 years later. Took a first place in 59. It took the national championship, which is like equivalent to what the Riddler Award is today. And 50 years later, it took a first place in Radical Custom Convertible because you weren't eligible to compete in the Riddler because the car had already been shown and it won. So, quite the achievement.
Thing I found, when I was young, I had more hair. The wind wouldn't mess my hair up.
It wouldn't mess it up at all.
No, it was right, but the angle was right. Not intentional, but it happened.
Well, I bet you like that though. You know?
Yeah, I didn't have to comb it.
Didn't have to comb it. Yeah. Well, you must have been quite the sharp guy going around those days, because the pictures that I have of you with the car.
Well, to me, it was just another automobile.
You dress really sharp. Yeah. It's funny how people think it's just an automobile, but this is so special, this car, Arthur. So, you know, when I went to register this car, Arthur, I wanted to keep your 1959
number plate
on the car, which is on the car today. And And because this was a custom-built car, they couldn't relate to it, and they rejected my application to register this car with that 1959 plate. And if you remember, what I did then was we actually, because it is on a Dodge chassis, we registered this as a 1959 Dodge Lancer. And the police inspected it, they approved it, they looked at the numbers, and it's registered as a 59 Dodge Lancer, and that way we're able to keep your plate on the car.
Now, I don't know why the other number plate is missing.
The front plate.
The front one, because I had them together.
Right, the pictures I have of the car shows both the front plate and a back plate.
Yeah, and I have the frame.
Right.
Oh, well.
I think you might have given me the frame for it. I think I might have the frame for it in that, but no other plate. But that's okay, it looks really nice without the front plate in the front also.
And the emergency brake is off a Dodge truck. What it does, it locks the drive shaft.
That goes right in the end of the transmission, right?
Yeah. And here's the lever.
Yeah, yeah.
It still works. The spring didn't break yet.
No, yeah, it still works, the emergency. I think we adjusted that all up and made sure that worked.
Joe did a gorgeous job restoring the car. Too bad they have no way of restoring me.
Well, you know, if we could do that, we'd be miracle makers, you know.
And the brake pedal is a Ford.
Yeah. Arthur, did you ever think this car would ever be restored again?
Nope.
Not at all, huh?
After sitting 48 years, well, my garage is 64 by 40. It's got plenty of room in there, so it didn't bother me. But it had enough dust on it that you couldn't recognize it.
Yeah.
And I had a kitty cat that used to like to climb in the window, walk on the car, and then jump out the other window to chase mice. There were no mice in this car or nothing.
I think the cat took good care of those. Thank goodness, you know. Thank goodness that they didn't get in there and eat all the wiring.
Something.
Yeah, eating something up out of it.
The only thing that would have bothered me would be wiring.
Yeah. Well, after setting all of those years, the car was in very rough condition. You know, it wasn't the kind of thing we could have taken out and washed and driven it down the road. It was just time had taken its toll.
It was actually brown from dust.
Oh yeah, like a brown looking color with the dust on it, yeah.
But a good thing I saved all the pieces.
That's right.
I started to rebuild it. I took everything off, the chrome. I started stripping it. I had a few pieces stripped. The bumper was stripped in the back. And then I ended up working.
Yeah.
Besides catering and the restaurant.
Yeah.
Anyway, now I don't have to do anything other than let Joe give me a ride.
Yeah. So we're gonna go for a country ride tomorrow, maybe up and down the road a little bit.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, you know, Arthur, you know, it was funny when I was restoring this car. There's a funny thing that happened. You didn't see the car after it was painted. You had gone to Florida.
No, I was at the show.
But when I was restoring the car and I was sanding the side of the car, okay, I was using a more modern block sanding thing. And you told me I was doing it wrong, and you went back down to your shop and you got me what you sanded this with. Now, would you block this out with? What'd you do?
Well, when I blocked it out, I got a big file and I ground the edges off so there wouldn't be any shot. And I would roll the 500 wet sandpaper, and I would use that, and that's what I sanded everything flat with.
Yeah, that was scary because you came over and you got this flat bastard file that wrapped the sandpaper on, and you know, I'm not used to that kind of stuff, and you just sort of pushed me out of the way and you went like this and started sanding the car away in the shop. And you know, I'll never forget when I was restoring this car, you'd come over all the time to check in the progress, give me advice, tell me what I was doing right, and tell me what I was doing wrong. But what I thought was amazing was your hands, because you'd go around the body of this car and touch it and feel it, all right, and know and say, no, you got to do this a little different, You're so connected with the car, the feel of the car.
I used no body putty.
No body putty at all.
I leaded all the seams.
Yeah.
And the calluses on my 2 fingers are going down, but that was from holding the file.
There's no body filler in this car at all. You know, I wanted to be very true to what you did and the methods and how you did it, you know, to make sure that this was a very accurate restoration on the car.
And I taught a lot of people how to use lead.
Yeah.
And some argued with me, but eventually my system worked because the lead didn't fall off.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is really sort of like, you know, what they'd call now a lead sled.
Yeah, learn as you go.
Yeah. But I mean, they never called cars lead sleds back in the day of this car, did they?
No, one kid did.
One kid did?
Yeah, in Brookline, at the Home Light distributorship.
And he'd call them lead sleds, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. Must have been a fairly new term back then.
But anyway,
Yeah.
but I enjoyed driving it.
Yeah. So what do you think about the car now being up here at the Owl's Head Museum?
It's going to outlast me.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really
That's
nice,
for
the
sure,
exhibit
right?
they've done here. And it's a real testament to the quality of the car and the workmanship you did.
Well, I still might get a trophy.
You might get a trophy. Yeah, you have so many trophies, Arthur. I have them all in my shop. They're absolutely gorgeous, you know.
We'll move them closer together.
Oh, if they get another trophy, we can move them closer together.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll have to figure out how you can get another trophy someplace, you know. It's funny because I have all your old trophies, and right there next to your national championship trophy, and
It's about this high, right?
yeah, is the one we got in Detroit at Autorama. And if I remember right, that trophy that you got in Detroit in 1959, who presented that trophy to you at
It
that
was
thing?
the same company they made the Academy Awards.
But was it Wally Parks that actually presented that trophy?
One step under Wally Parks. What happened at the Nationals in Detroit? They all trophies. I'm leaning on a post, watching all the action going on. People say, "Did you win anything?" I say, "You can't win them all." Finally, Dick Day
Dick Day. Okay,
was
yeah.
awarding the trophies. Finally, Wally Parks grabs the microphone and he says, "Now, for the top custom of the year, built by that chicken farmer in Chelmsford, Massachusetts," he says, "by unanimous decision, the Raven." Oh, geez,
Wow.
that was something.
That must have been real exciting, huh?
Yeah.
Well, the paint on this, the car's beautiful. I think we should go for a ride. What do you think? You want to drive?
No,
You want me to drive for you?
my leg is killing me.
All right.